And I'm finding out they affect bacteria too. They affect big guys, even guys with funny hats, like our president of a certain country. I don't have a red funny hat, I only have a green funny hat. Big guys, little guys, every living thing. These microplastics, biggest source is rubbish. This is culled not from Bournemouth Beach, but from Brighton Beach. Floats for lobster pot, breaking up. This is what it breaks up to in quite a short time. This is what happens to our plastic bags. They don't last forever, but they break up into smaller and smaller pieces. One of the worst offenders is polystyrene. Do we really need to have polystyrene disposable crockery? This breaks up into little bits. This is a piece of packaging, protects packaging. There are lots of alternatives to this. This is a piece of fishing net. This is one of the biggest causes of pollution in the sea, because these break up into small bits. They get ingested by organisms which get ingested by fish, probably making our fish unsafe to eat now. Do we really have to have plastic bottles for our water? In fact, locally I would say that the water from our tap is a lot safer from what you get from a plastic bottle. Evidence. Now, if you want to have a copy of these slides, I'm very happy to send to you. I'm not going to sort of labour the technical background, but basically the most dangerous of these plastics are bits in the range 1 to 10 microns across, because these are small enough to get from our intestines into our bloodstream, and they can then get picked up by white blood cells which can't digest plastic because we're not evolved to do that, and then they end up stuck in the capillaries of the human brain. And then they can get into the placenta of a pregnant woman and get into the brain of the unborn child. And this is, the evidence is that we are getting all kinds of serious problems. Research in the United States, autopsies on people who died, showed that people who died of dementia had 10 times the brain plastic content of people who died of other natural causes. At the same time, we're getting increases in miscarriages, reduces in human fertility. Healthy women in the United Kingdom now can only produce 1.41 children. So we are now dependent on immigrants if we British people are not going to go out of business. Though immigrants are welcome, my wife is an example of an immigrant, fellow at the Institute of Physics, and it works, and we're both supposed to be retired, but we work very hard for the benefit of society.
I'm not retired, I'm still working.
Yes. In fact, we're working now harder than ever before. So that's the link for the New Mexico study that showed that there's a link between microplastics and dementia. There's now a class action suit going on in California against a company that produces a cook-in-a-bag, plastic bag for a microwave, and my recommendation is under no circumstances put anything plastic in a microwave cooker or a dishwasher or anywhere that it gets hot. But you can't escape these microplastics, they're in the air, so we're all exposed to it to some extent, though we can reduce our exposure. But we really need to not produce the stuff in the first place, that is oil-produced plastics, which the human body can't break down. And the Alzheimer's Society estimates that 982,000 people in the UK now have dementia, and this number is projected to 1.4 million by 2040. And by 2050, NHS England estimates there will be over 1.6 million people. So this is not because they're improving diagnosis of dementia, more people are getting ill. And I say this affects in unborn children in a complicated way, that the microplastics, I have no evidence that they're getting into the brain of the unborn child, but there's plenty of evidence they get into the placentas, so it's reasonable to assume the blood vessels in an unborn child are very small, so it's likely they're getting it clogged up, The biggest cause of miscarriages apparently is lack of oxygen getting to the brain of the child, which is then dies, and then there's a miscarriage, or worse, and if you live in Texas, a dead child that you have to carry until it's born, or the mother dies of sepsis. And this is a scan of an unborn child, which I happen to have, which at that time was very healthy, but then of course it was more and more dependent on the human blood supply through the placenta, and something went wrong. The fetal heart rate went down, which indicates the brain is not getting enough oxygen, and the result was a miscarriage, a pretty bad miscarriage for the person in question. And the person in question, the couple wanted 3 children, and all they have are 3 cats. And this is not because they preferred cats to children, they were desperate to have a family. And this is happening to more and more people. The same goes with children for special needs. The number is going up all the time, and it's getting harder and harder to cope. And according to government specifications, the number of school pupils with education and healthcare plans is written by 180,000, or 71% between 2018 and 2024. As now nearly 5% of pupils now have educational health and care plans. And it's also another government statistic, 1 in 5 children and young people now had a probable mental disorder in 2023. These are all government figures, so they know things are going wrong. And I know that the plastics industry knows that things are going wrong, because 20 years ago, I sat down to dinner with Carl von Schritz, who was the technical director of DuPont Plastics. And he said, we have to get away from oil-produced plastics, he said, and go back to the roots of my company, which was to make plastics derived from wood. He was then made to retire. And there is this, it's the same story as asbestos, the same story as silicosis. Of course, Nigel Farage wants to send people down the mines again to die of silicosis. And the same story as smoking, where the tobacco industry for years fought against the fact that smoking causes cancer, and are still selling the stuff. This is a micrograph which was on the Institute of Physics journal Physics World, and it shows what happens in mice. This is an experiment we can't do with humans, because the subject's going to end up dead. But it shows the dispersion of microplastics by a method called double flash fluoroscopy. You get a pulse of light, and then you get a fluorescent pulse of light coming back, and you can track strange materials. So here it is flowing into the capillaries of the brain. So all this is known. And there's another aspect too. When plastics break down, they release materials called plasticizers. These are evil chemicals that we use to improve the quality of the plastic. One particular one is bisphenol A. And research in Australia says, yes, there is a genetic link between autism and geneticism and who your parents were. But there's a causal link, because humans who cannot break down bisphenol A are more likely to get autism. So there is a genetic link, and all these issues are quite complicated and muddy. So it's not that they're more likely to get autism if they were in a pure environment, but they're more likely to get it in an environment which is poisoned by this rubbish. The plastics industry is in the process of phasing out bisphenol A, but there is a heck of a lot of rubbish which still contains it. Can we avoid ingesting microplastics? The short answer is no. It's everywhere. We breathe it in, we get microplastics from old tires. But we can reduce our risk. But the only real way is to stop producing the things that cause the trouble in the first place. We can't depend on getting people from countries which aren't polluted with plastic for the survival of our society, because we're ruining their world as well. That's a slide that's from India, showing that how microplastics get through the soil. So we have a problem here. Sewage, these water companies have been cheerfully putting sewage on farmers' fields. They can't filter out the microplastics. In fact, they don't even have the technology to detect the microplastics in the sewage. And then the microplastics get ingested by organisms in the soil, and they end up in the food that we eat. So even in India, they're becoming aware of it. China is becoming very aware of the problems of microplastics. There they seem to be mainly concerned about the effect on human sperm, which are even tinier particles, and they're looking at the effects of PTFE, which is non-stick cookware. Obviously they use more non-stick frying pans in China than we do, but that seems to be their particular concern. But all kinds of plastics are turning up in the human body. At one time, people said, oh, we're full of bits of plastic, so what? But it is actually wrecking our survival as a species. We can go on living, but are we going to go and have healthy children? What is it doing to the natural environment? This is where we have our own personal knowledge. My wife, years ago, put all the money she had, with my backing, into buying a piece of forest in Kent called Hode's Wood. 36.5 acres. Unbeknown to the person who we were bidding against, we had just enough money to buy it. If we'd gone a few pounds more, we couldn't have bought it. And this is a very beautiful wood, full of flowers, magnificent oak trees, and all kinds of animals. Or at least it was. 30,000 tons of rubbish was then dumped onto the woods next door to ours. This has been on the BBC and so on. And we could not get this stopped. Lorries, 20-ton lorries with no number plates were arriving every 45 minutes to dump more stuff. A letter from the police I have, no crime has been committed. And the Environment Agency, we are still investigating. And this went on until, by luck, we met a financier who was annoyed at the smell coming into his multi-million-pound mansion on one side of the wood. And he said, I'm going to take the Environment Agency to court. And this is a man for whom this was petty cash, so they knew he meant it. He also got a question asked by a Liberal Democrat peer in the House of Lords. All our attempt to get action through the Labour Party, of which we were then a member, or the Conservative Party, got absolutely nowhere. No interest, no concern. Anyway, the result is that we have the northern part of our wood, which happens to be protected by an earth dam, is fine. If you go to one of our ponds, you will find it's full of life, and in the summer, you don't get bitten by mosquitoes because the dragonflies will swoop and eat the mosquitoes off you as they start to bite, which is an extraordinary experience. The southern pond, though, was exposed to the microplastics, and in the watercourses it was a kind of black slime which coated everything, and there's now nothing left alive in that pond, except bacteria who produce a few bubbles of gas. And so is this the fate of the world if we let this problem get any worse? And plastic production, according to the Lancet, is increasing. So there's a picture of some of the rubbish. It's not all plastic, but a lot of it is. We don't know where it came from. Still, that information is not available. We think there's been a big cover-up somewhere. We know that locally plastics are being carefully separated by householders from other waste, yet it's all ending up in the same place. This looks like mixed municipal waste to me, plus building materials, plus probably stuff from garages. But we lack the technology to really know what's going on. Here's a close-up. We have a website called Save Hode's Wood. Now this 30,000 tonnes is now being removed, and put in another hole in the ground somewhere else. We trust it will be lined and not pollute the environment anymore. Now this is the first pond, covered in green material. It is slimy, but it's a slime called spirogyra, which actually turns sunlight into oxygen. So it's quite healthy. Water lilies, and I say tons of dragonflies and damselflies, you name it. And this is the dead pond. At least it was like the other pond before, now it's dead. And I say we've got this black slime. Fortunately, I handled it with thick rubber gloves when I was pulling wood out of the drainage ditches. And this water drains into the Dwelt River, drains into the River Medway, and gets into the local drinking supply. Fortunately, not the water we drink at home, because as by luck would have it, our water comes from a deep borehole in the chalk, where it's filtered by about 200 metres of chalk. But most people are not getting safe water. The water company says it's no problem. So is the problem getting worse? Definitely. And I've got these, if you want to have these slides, links to the articles which are in the most learned of journals. And I'm not going to bother to read out exactly what they say.
Yeah, I'll circulate